Hey everybody, Larry Powell here, your host for Studio HFL, where you truly do hear from legends. And here tonight on a Tuesday night, July 13th, 2021, almost forgot what year it was. uh, and my guest tonight, Doug McVey, Venture Mouthpieces. Before we get to Doug, um, I wanted to steer everybody towards it is Doug, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know, I
Yep.
spaced it for a second. Steer everybody towards the Studio HFL website. And of course, there you can sign up for the newsletter and check out merchandise and all the previous interviews. Of course, all these interviews are available on audio and any audio podcast platform. And now all of the video interviews are available on the Studio HFL YouTube channel. And you can like and subscribe when you go there. So, without further ado, I want to welcome my guest tonight, Doug McVey, Venture Mouthpieces. Hey, I owe you a real quick apology first. My mind was in vacation mode today, and I was just, I was spacing it. And I saw that message come through, and I'm like, uh-oh. So,
Well, that was the message of the year. You said, "Am I on this thread by accident?"
yeah, yeah. I mean, and then I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I completely spaced it. So my apologies. I didn't mean to make anybody panic. I think actually the only person that panicked was me.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's all good.
but welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
So, one of the things I like about interviewing people in the service industry, right? People who manufacture mouthpieces and mutes and trumpets is it's not the same from one to the other. It's like everybody's got their own angle on this,
Yep.
and it's all really good. It's like the competition has driven. Well, competition always drives excellence, right? You either innovate or uh, you go work at McDonald's, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, give me a little bit of background first. Like, are you a trumpet player? What's the
I am a
story there?
trumpet player. Yeah, I've been playing since I was 8 years old, so 35 years worth.
Nice. Okay, let me do the math. Okay, got it. 40, 40, 43. Right. Um, so you are. Sorry. Let me gather myself together here. What part of the country are you from?
Originally Long Island. I grew up, just 30 miles east of New York City, and went to college in New England and grad school in upstate New York, and then came to the Research Triangle Park area of North Carolina.
Okay, I'm not sure if I believe you because you don't have a hint of an East Coast or Long Island. Did that disappear somewhere along the way?
Well, I mean, if I want to talk like I'm from Long Island, and there's certain words like coffee and 20 that I can say that, where you can hear it. But I've spent now, quite a bit more time away from the island than I spent on the island. So,
Yeah.
and all of the places I've studied and worked have been melting pots.
Hmm.
So I shed the strongest notes of my accent. I also love accents. I'm a real fan. It's something you should know about me.
Okay.
I'm a connoisseur of accents. I love all the different American accents, all the different Southern ones. And I love the Northeastern ones. I love the Midwestern ones, the upper Midwestern, you know, ones. And of course, the British Isles are like the mecca for me. And that's, one of the many reasons why, Michael Barkley and I from Northern Ireland get along so well because, I love all of the British Isles accents, and there's so many of them crammed into such a small space.
It's interesting you say that. I worked on the Queen Mary 2 for a summer a few years back, and it's a British cruise ship, Cunard,
Mm,
and I was one of two Americans on there. And of course, up to that point, I had kind of, there was the British accent blanket, right? One. It's like, and then all of a sudden, you meet the Scousers, and you meet the people from Cornwall, and you meet the people from the Midlands, and you meet, right? So,
yep,
and all of a sudden, it's
exactly.
like, oh my gosh, there's such a diversity of accents here, and then it became really obvious,
Yeah,
and kind of not a competition with anybody else but me. It was, I meet somebody and I try to place them, You know,
Yeah.
it was usually wrong, but
No,
yeah.
I love trying to place people. I love trying to, figure that out. I love, trying to try out accents and things. I think there's something musical, being a musician, noticing which vowels get turned and twisted how, and then starting to find the touchstone for each accent. The one sentence that'll make you say 3 or 4 or 5 of the distinguishing features to get you warmed up and into it. Just like when you're hearing a solo and you hear a new pattern or a new lick for the first time, and you mess around with it and you try it in a couple of different keys, and then you store it in the back of your mind. And I love things like that.
I like that you compared it to music, right? Because it's like listening to different styles, right? Identify it as reggae or Celtic.
Exactly. And what are the clues are not that obvious. I mean, to us it's obvious, but how would you program artificial intelligence to decide what style of music this is? And whereas you listen to a bar or two and pretty well, what it is, and you might be able to identify the artist based on the style.
Right.
And that's, for now, pretty uniquely human to be able to very quickly, their voice sounds like this,
right?
Their trumpet sounds like this, and just, based on the, what the percussion is doing, what the bass line's doing, what other instruments are involved right away. Yeah, you can make a pretty good determination who it is, what it is, where it's going, when it may have been recorded.
I'm thinking back to, well, I grew up in Kentucky, and people from Kentucky, well, I guess it's kind of like Tennessee or West Virginia, right? Most people, you say you're from a certain area, and then they're like, well, you must just talk like this all the time. Well, now I just popped into that Andy Griffith what do you call it? Dialect, but it was funny. I moved to Indiana 30 some years ago, and it almost immediately disappeared, and maybe musicians have that ability to adapt.
I think there's something to that. People who enjoy accents and who pick up new accents and lose them quickly. I think that's part of, listening with your ears and paying attention to what you're hearing and subconsciously, putting it into what you're doing. That's how we learned phrasing. That's how we learned, improvisation, that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, this plays right into what you're doing with designing mouthpieces, right? I mean, because it's not just like you're turning out a hunk of brass, right? I mean, you're designing something for a certain acoustic, a certain feel, right? A certain sound.
Absolutely. There's the acoustical component, which is, the number one thing. Well, number one is the way it feels, the rim feel. Once you have found a rim that feels good on your chops, you shackle yourself to it. You do the wrist binding ceremony to it until it's no longer the right one, until you age, your teeth move something.
Right.
And I mentioned Michael Barkley. He found a rim of mine that he loved, and we put it on everything. Flugelhorn, French horn doubling piece. We put it on several different size and acoustic setup cups for different genres that sound completely different, but all start with that same mouth feel. So you don't have to get used to a different high point. And that high point of the rim and that inner bite and having it feel like home, that's number one. And then from there, it becomes an acoustic wonderland of trying to make the cup do the right thing and the right size throat and the right type of back bore, and gap and all those.
I'm curious, with
parameters.
with a custom piece like that, how long does it take you to find the right rim and the right bore size?
Well, okay, so and this is, I mean, you talk about innovation, and I guess my one claim to fame, my big innovation is the VenCAD software ecosystem, right? We wrote, Adventure wrote it from scratch. So it's one piece of, it's one piece of, or 3 pieces of software tied together in an ecosystem. There's software that runs the scanner that we built for scanning existing geometries. There's a software that immediately pulls the scans in and allows you to look at them and create new designs. There's, VenCAD, the CAD software. And then there is the CAM software, which instantly turns designs into toolpaths. So it takes about 5 minutes to scan in a new mouthpiece. It takes as long as it takes to do a design. It can take, seconds to do a design in VenCAD. If it's as simple as change the backbore, open up the throat or close the throat or make the cup a little bigger, and then it takes under 5 seconds to go from VenCAD to the lathe.
Okay, so I had a little bit of audio glitch right there, but I mean, okay, 5 seconds to get from what you finally got in design to the lathe.
To the lathe.
Then how long before you actually, hand it to this person and say, okay, try this?
Well, so if if I'm doing some kind of a live fitting, the old way to do live fitting is you stand in front of the lathe with someone with hand tools and they, go at the thing until it's too big, then you throw it away and start again. So typically what I like to do is take a guess at a backbore or two and make them as a 2-piece, screw configuration, and then make screw tops, right? So to cut a screw top takes a little under 5 minutes, actually cutting.
I still don't understand how that works, right? I mean, how you can actually, because are you talking about actually severing an existing mouthpiece, or these are two different components that you eventually put together?
No, I mean, they start as the product is, the screw top. Okay. That's just, I'd start with a piece of brass, and on my own time, I, in batches of hundreds, make them as blanks that don't have a cup and rim and everything. They just have the screw section and the under, piece here. And I just stick in the lathe, and, if we've made 3 or 4 or 5 things to try, it's 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It's one after the other. The lathe spits them out, with the cup and the rim right.
I think where I got confused on that is people have said, "Oh, I sent my mouthpiece in and they made they turned it into a screw rim or screw cup."
Yeah.
I mean, is that possible?
Well, I mean, I have an associate who'll do that for me. It's for manual for something like that, for someone who wants to take something and destroy it and make it into a I send it to Greg Black, and Ben Strickland does, they do the best that kind of work, as well or better than anybody in the business.
Yeah.
But typically for me, I'm starting always from bar stock. So
gotcha.
If you sent me a mouthpiece and said, "Hey, I love the rim I have, but can you make it with a cup that's similar in volume to a whatever and put it on," sure, I would, do that in the scanning software. I'd scan the mouthpiece. I'd open up VenCAD. I'd take your rim, graft it onto a cup, make the cup deeper or shallower as necessary. And then if we're making a series of screw tops, I would take a screw top blank, which is basically just, this with nothing drilled into it.
Right.
And then send it to the lathe, and 5 minutes later, out comes this. And then we do that times 2, times 3, times 5, until you've got the one that you want, and then either that's the end product or we make it as a 1-piece.
I can't imagine the amount of, I hate to call it waste, but I mean there's probably a decent amount of waste that goes along. Or can you recycle? Can you do anything with that other stuff?
Well, so I guess if you're talking about when you're actually making a mouthpiece, if you're making screw tops, there's not a whole lot of waste.
Well, I'm saying, hey, this top doesn't work. Let's try a different one. Oh, you chuck them.
Yeah, I recycle them. Well, so I get about a third of the price of the brass back, because in the condition it's in, it can just be melted down and recast. So this is entrepreneurship 101. This is one of my favorite times of the. I rent the little truck from Home Depot. I don't really have a truck, and I put about usually I bring about 1,200, 1,400 pounds at a time of scrap brass. Most of it's turnings, right, which is removed from make finished pieces. Right. And I bring to the recycling, and they pay me about a third of the new value of brass. So
at least you're getting something back. Yeah.
Yeah, I get something back, sure. and it's not, I mean, as far as, you know, being wasteful for the planet or whatever, you know, it's recycled with, you know, they just melt it and, you know, re-smelt or whatever they do with it. And
when is the last time a trumpet player was ever concerned about the planet? Right? I mean, we spit all over we drop valve oil and stuff all over the planet all the time.
well,
I'm being funny
you know,
about that, but yeah.
you know, as a, you know, as a Northeasterner by birth, and, you know, going to the schools I went to, you know, I feel like I have that liberal guilt about the planets. But yeah, so there is definitely some rework, or, you know, and scrapping of things when you're doing custom fittings. Now, a lot of the actual work I do is production, right? A fair amount of my revenue is doing white label manufacturing for other brands who hand me, you know, something they've made by hand or whatever, and then say, I would like 5 of these. Also, could you make, you know, 3 more with this different rim on it, and, you know, use VenCAD to make this or that or the other, and make 1 of these, 2 of these, 5 with a number 24 throat, and, you know, a laundry list of things. That's a lot of my revenue, and that obviously is just, you know, that's for orders, so that's not ever waste. But the custom fitting process, you know, we burn through some of these tops and recycle them. But the beauty of the tops is they're, you know, compact, so you can make, with the amount of stock you can make one finished one-piece mouthpiece out of, you can make, you know, about 4 or 5 of these.
Doug, I'm curious. I'm having audio issues on this end, and I'm wondering if anybody else is experiencing this. Are you seeing or hearing anything on your end?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, it's you've been breaking up quite a bit in just the last couple of minutes, and I'm curious that I'm going to lose that. But
well, I can try a different microphone. Somewhere here.
I'm not sure it's you. It looks like, I don't know if it's a signal weakness on my end. But if anybody's listening and let us know if there are any audio issues.
Oh, there's a comment that says sound is good here.
Okay, great. So, okay, so we'll keep going. We'll keep going. All right. So there's at some point along your trumpet career that you're like, there's got to be a better mouthpiece, right? I mean, this is what happens. You start to think about, I could do this, or you know, somewhere along the journey where you're buying Schilke or you're buying Jet Tone. I don't know where Jet Tone came from, but, you know, whatever mouthpiece, and you're like, I can do this myself. What was that? When did that happen?
Well, don't knock Jet Tone. Jet Tone's great.
Well, I know. In fact, I've got my Doc Severinsen Jet Tone right over here somewhere.
Well, I mean, I tell the story of, you know, when I was 12 and I brought my communion money into Jerome Callett in Staten Island to buy a jazz trumpet. And I saw him, he was making a mouthpiece out of, on the hand lathe, and I was just, you know, transfixed by it. And I always sort of thought it would be cool to do. And, you know, fast forward a couple of decades, and I was you know, automation engineer with a graduate degree in, you know, engineering from Cornell. So, you know, I do automation and, you know, software design for automation, you know, and specifically automation of, you know, mechatronics stuff, not web automation, but, you know, driving machines around. So writing user interfaces and control software for all sorts of robotics and automated test systems. And so the company that I started, KDY Automation, I directed the company to buy me a CNC lathe that would sit in the corner and proceed to gather dust for half a decade. And I would work on it for a day, and then I get sidetracked for 3 months. And, you know, and the vision that I initially had was publishing software that people could use to customize a mouthpiece, and then uploading the design to me. And VenCAD, that's what VenCAD is. It exists. It works, you know. And over time, you know, that will be marketed better and more as it, you know, gains penetration. But I just, you know, had that vision of being able to do, people being able to do that with simple tools. Because even if you can't design a mouthpiece from scratch, you can look at the one that you have or one that you're familiar with and say, okay, but if only this were a little deeper, but not as deep as this other one. And so you'd bring up both of those images and go somewhere in between them, you know?
Yeah, but I look at a mouthpiece and I can't tell, with a naked eye. Maybe nobody can really with a naked eye. All the slight contours, the changes in slope and that sort of thing. Where does the V actually start if it's a V cup? Where does
Well,
and so how do you measure that sort of thing?
so I will say, with the naked eye, I can't tell that either. Only Greg Black can tell that. He's magic. I'm not joking. There are
Yeah,
some people, like, if that's what you do day in and day out, you get an eye for it.
sure.
But the problem with mouthpieces is they're mirrors, they're reflective, and so
Mm,
slightly different polishing or tarnishing or whatever can make the same mouthpiece look different. And people who
right.
work on the manual lathe get really good at it. I'm not good at it. That's why, VenCAD is a two-dimensional. You're looking at a cross section all the time.
Hmm.
And I'd be happy to bring it up and show you. I just don't want to, leave out anyone who's on the audio only. But
Yeah,
I can on my screen. I can show you how VenCAD works. But it becomes a lot more clear. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And
right,
seeing the
right.
thing and looking into it and trying to stare and figure out, forget about it. That's difficult. But once you
Hmm.
see it cut in 2 dimensions, and then you see it compared to something else, then it all starts to make sense,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And
is
that,
it
like,
possible to bring that up? Do
yeah,
you
sure,
have
I'd
that?
be happy to. So
Yeah.
let's bring up a little VenCAD for you. And I don't know if it's possible to give me the whole screen there, but here's VenCAD. And so let's see.
Let's see if I
Let's
can.
bring up. We're talking a little jet tone. Here's an Al Hirt Model A. Oh yeah, now I've got the whole thing. So there's a jet tone Al Hirt Model A, and compare that to something else, small, presumably, because we're talking small now. I don't know, a Bobby Shoe lead from Yamaha, right? So now, and maybe we'll turn them into some colors that'll show up better at home. Might be wise. So red and blue. All right. So now perhaps you can see the Jet Tone Model A in red and the Bobby Shoe lead in blue. And you'll notice right away that the Al Hirt has a much flatter rim. Can you see that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my audio is on when I'm out of the picture. But yes, I can see that.
But you could hear me.
Yes.
I hope. Okay, great. All right. All right. So yeah. So there's that Al Hirt there has a much flatter rim, and the Bobby Shoe has a much more rounded rim. You can see that the Al Hirt is going to play smaller inner diameter wise, but VenCAD actually tells you, it may be a little fuzzy over the video, but VenCAD tells me the cup volumes are actually quite similar. 0.048 for the Al Hirt and 0.049 for the Bobby Shoe. So and the Bobby Shoe is a tighter throat entrance, and you can start to see these things. The inner bite is much sharper on the Al Hirt. It's a flatter rim, but the alpha angle, as GR calls it, is much sharper. And this cursor allows you to see what the slope is of each curve at every point. And so you can start to imagine what things might feel like. What if that Al Hirt is just a little bit too restrictive on that inner bite, but otherwise you like it. And that's where VenCAD comes in. It's so easy to, for example, start with that Al Hirt, and you see how much further it comes in, than that Bobby Shoe. Right
Yeah.
away you can start doing things like smoothing out.
I mean, we're talking microns, right? I mean, this is not even millimeters. This is smaller
It's
than that.
millimeters. I mean, well, but it's small. But those are they will feel very different to anybody.
Wow.
Very different.
Excellent.
Similar size overall, but very different mouth feel, for example. Oh,
There
there
we
you
go.
go. Look at that.
There we go. So here's my question. It's like everybody's lip structure is different. Everybody has a different overbite, underbite. The dental, everything is different. There are no two people alike. So, even if you're like, oh, I want this mouthpiece or that mouthpiece, ideally, you would have some way of mapping your chops, right? And then going from there.
Well, so I mean that's sort of a dream, but the reality is that, you know, the way your chops look at rest versus the way they look at when you're playing is very different, right? You're contorting, you're squeezing, you're, you know, rolling in, rolling out, whatever. What I started Venture to do is to be able to customize very quickly, with the aim of fitting mouthpieces to people faster and better than had ever been done before. I don't think there are any magical designs. Nothing I can make is magical. Nothing I make hasn't been made somewhere before, right? But to me, but there's so many variables, you know, moving around, all sorts of different things that can make the mouthpiece play very differently for, you know, any kind of proficient player. So the key isn't to come up with a magic design that's going to work. The key is to understand what you're playing now, be able to see it, be able to have the, you know, the player articulate what is lacking,
right?
What they would like different, and then be able to either find something off the shelf or, you know, or make a custom one as fast as possible, you know. And people use the term mouthpiece safari as a sort of pejorative, but it is a safari. It's a journey. We're on a journey.
Right.
Life is a journey. You evolve as a player. If you're always going to be the same player, well, then why practice? You know, we practice, we listen, you know, we play, you know, new performance challenges in order to progress as a player. And as you change and evolve and age, your equipment's going to have to change with you if you want to be at the top of your game, you know. So always I'm trusting that the player has something that works reasonably well for them. If they've evolved to it through, you know, happenstance, something they tried years ago, and then they wanted something bigger. So in that line, they went to the next bigger one, but then someone did a custom alteration to, and then they have this. This is where they are today.
Right.
And I love to scan whatever someone's playing on today, or the couple of things they're playing on. And I also love to scan what did they used to play on that they don't play on anymore, and tell me why. You know, and then based on those two pieces of data, what are you playing and what have you quit and why? I can give you the next step on the journey, I think, faster than anybody.
I wonder, I'm thinking about my own journey while you're talking about that. Of course, you know, you get into the orchestral world at some point and it's like bigger is better. You got to go big. You got to play a 1.5. Oh, you got to play 1.25. You got to play a 1. You got to play a 1B. You got to play a 1X. Right. Yeah. And then you get further down the line and you're like, why am I working so hard? You know, so you start to come back down. You might keep the deep cut, but you change the rim size. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, right? But it's funny, the evolution of that. And I think everybody has to go through it to some degree, right? I mean, you have to cut through the weeds or take your machete and clear out. You know, if we're on a safari, you got to clear out that sort of thing. But, you know, and not even thinking about physiological changes just because of age, but, you know, famous people have had their teeth knocked out, you know, Bud Herseth, and you know, imagine having to come back after something like that, you know, nothing's going to work, right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, that, like, to me, that you mentioned two important things. One is the large cups in orchestral playing, and two is Bud Herseth. And I was talking to Aaron Norland, who plays, I believe, the New World Symphony, and he also has done some scholarly work, you know, tracing a little bit of the history of trumpet and orchestral trumpet. He's obviously a very, you know, outstanding player. And he was saying that sort of in the post-war era, 50s, 60s, you know, the concert halls got bigger and bigger really fast. And it went from a more intimate setting for an orchestra, and the orchestras got bigger. The orchestra got bigger, the concert halls got bigger. And all of a sudden, a trumpet player had to fill a 3,000 person auditorium instead of a 500 person hall.
Right.
And the orchestra around them got bigger. You know, a full symphony became 20, 30, 40 pieces bigger. And so the trumpet player has to project the same music louder, right? And not that we generally have a problem playing loudly, but playing loudly without getting an edge on the sound, without brassing out.
Right.
You know, is a challenge. So what do? You need a bigger cup and a bigger throat. And that is what allows you to do that. You know, you can create more decibels with the same darker timbre that you did, you know, with the smaller equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the same time, Bud Herseth, you know, I can't remember, was 60s, sometime late 50s, early 60s. Bud Herseth had his accident and went from a 6/7C, which is what everybody was playing in the orchestra in the first part of the 20th century, to a 1C, you know, and everyone loved how he sounded. And coincidentally, the concert halls got bigger, the orchestras got bigger, we had to play louder without an edge on the sound. So the equipment got bigger and the throats got bigger. And that's for a good reason. You know, you can't, I mean, no matter how many long tones you do, you cannot use a number 30 throat with a, you know, with a pea shooter. And I mean, you can play nicely and beautifully with it, but you can't play at an orchestral forte without an edge on the sound. You just can't. I mean, that's just physics. You can relax your chops all you want. You can do all you want with your tongue. You know, you just can't, you know, at some point. Now, you know, based on the player, where that, you know, whether you have to go to a number 26 or 25 or 20, you know, that's dependent. But you can't play a pea shooter with an orchestra and sound dark at a loud volume. It's just not physically something that can be done. You know, if you back off the volume, you can sound pretty dark even on a small piece. You know, so that's why the orchestral pieces are so big. Now, for a different setting, for a chamber setting, say where you don't have to play so loudly, you probably can back the equipment down, smaller cup, tighter throat, and that might be preferable. So you're not working so hard, you know. And frankly, you know, that nice, comfortable mezzo forte, if that's too loud for the chamber group or the quintet or whatever it is, well, now you've got to add more, you know, resistance in the chops to not overblow that quintet. So maybe you need a different piece for your chamber playing, your quintet playing, whatever. And maybe that same piece is what you use for a solo, because maybe you want a little more zip when you're solo, you know, if you're playing your concerto, you know, in front of the orchestra versus when you're playing in the section. And so, you know, different tools for different jobs.
You know, I'm going to make a very basic comparison here. You know, there's the choosing a mouthpiece for all those reasons that you just mentioned. And then there's the choosing the mouthpiece. That's what Wayne Bergeron plays. I want to play that. Oh, that's what Roger Ingram plays. I want to play that. That's what Michael Sachs plays. I want to, right? I mean, and then there's those people that are just after, you know, they're chasing whatever horn or whatever mouthpiece their idol is playing. Yeah. You know, and so you're catering really to the other group, to that group that's I hate to say discerning, right? But it's a little more discerning.
Well, I mean, I like to think that we have something for everybody. You know, the company started with this initiative to allow people to customize their own, right? And that morphed into, you know, well, our ability to do that. We use that software internally to design things for other brands. You know, a brand who says, well, this is our flagship, whatever, mid-sized piece, but can you make it 2 rim sizes smaller and 1 rim, you know, a little bit shallower? We can make that and manufacture it for that brand cheaper than they get it, you know, other places.
So you're talking white label stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of our revenue is white label right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, because marketing, you know, a new brand is hard. And so that's how we fill in some of those spaces early on. So then I realized, well, it turns out this software is also great for designing things that, for prototypes, for designing, you know, signature models for artists, or for testing. You know, our first big product release of the lead mouthpiece line, you know, just happened these last couple of months. And we very quickly developed all these models and tested them with, you know, 9 expert testers around the world. And they give feedback, and the next day I'd send out another batch of samples, and they'd give more feedback. And you know, turning out those new designs, you know, that's what the software is good for. So, you know, sure, you know, I want to cater to both the person who knows what they want and can articulate it very clearly. This is what I'm playing now. Can you make it deeper, but not as deep as this other one? Halfway in between, say. Yes, that I can do. But I also want to be able to give someone who is more of a, you know, hey, recommend me something, and, you know, then recommend something else. I want to have that too. And that's, that's even when, as we're launching stock products, we're doing it with that venture process of tweaking, testing, retesting, tweaking, so that what we hand you, is something that I think's got a lot of design behind it, but still isn't magic, And one thing that I do not like is when people say this mouthpiece really plays in tune. I don't like saying that the mouthpiece doesn't play in tune, the player plays in tune. Well, it's both. A mouthpiece,
right.
A poor design can be hard to play in tune. But no matter what design it is, you give me two different players, and one of their chops will, as you said, intrude further, and immediately their pitch center goes up. Immediately the popping frequency goes up by 10, 20, 50 hertz. It's a completely different mouthpiece on their chops, same piece of metal. So there's nothing magic about that mouthpiece. It's the way you're playing it. Well, so then if you're that person with the more chop intrusion, and that's pushed the pitch center of the mouthpiece too high, well, then we've got to open the back bore and close down or open the throat and close the back bore down so that we can adjust for that. So if you like that cup, or we've got to, use a sharper inner bite that's not going to let you, roll as far into the cup or whatever, the adjustment is we're making. But yeah, there's nothing new in mouthpieces. What I'm trying to do that's new is get better at hearing what someone's doing, having them tell me what they're doing, and making the next thing or finding the right fit. I have sold people mouthpieces from other vendors, or I have said, people have said, I've looked at some of these stupid traces. So I've scanned someone's mouthpiece. They say, oh, I wish it was just a little bit shallower. I said, well, with that rim, that looks an awful lot like a Schilke, whatever. Why don't you give that a try? Because it's much cheaper, and I can't compete on that price. That doesn't bother me, because in a year or two, when their journey takes them to the next stage, I'm going to be the person they come back to, because I'm giving them information, and I'm giving them counsel.
Okay, we're going to take a left turn. I've always wondered, and the wedge mouthpiece is the only one that I can really think that's tried to deviate from the circle. But this is not round. The aperture is not round, right? It's like, why don't we have a rectangular mouthpiece? Does it have to be a bowl? Does it have to be? Can it have sharp angles inside? Can it be 90-degree angles inside? Has anybody ever tried that, or is that? I might just be proving myself to be the dumbest trumpet player on the face of the earth at the moment. But
so I mean, every so often there are attempts at non-symmetrical mouthpieces, right? I mean, the two that jump to mind are the wedge that you mentioned, which has been long running now, and John Lynch's asymmetric series.
Right, forgot about that one.
And those are the two that come to mind. I'm sure there have been other attempts and so forth. And like I owned an asymmetric for a while. I tried to play it. I never really got good at playing it. I kept going back to the round one. And then, I've tried the wedge. It doesn't work great for me. That doesn't mean it's not a good product. I think it is a good product. And I think, that thinking is worth doing. I actually would have been more sanguine on those concepts a couple of years ago, before I really got hot and heavy into this full time. Seeing what people do with their chops, seeing what the top pros do. And I'm talking about both the commercial guys and the orchestral guys, everybody. The amount of pivoting that we do, pivoting the chops, rolling in, rolling out, changing the direction of our airstream with our chops, I think that like crowns or high points keep you from smoothly doing that. You are constantly, you're not aware of it, but you're constantly, and there, I can't try to remember who's the orchestral player, a Scandinavian fellow, I can't remember who it was doing did a short lesson or a video on jumping octaves, right? And he talked about changing, thinking about changing the direction of your airstream. you know, and I'm saying, well, that's a pivot. You know, he as an orchestral player, world class, that's a pivot. You know, and the ability to smoothly and slickly, you know, adjust your chops around the mouthpiece, I think is a key thing to what we do. I think, you know, now is it, you know, if you started a beginner on a different type of mouthpiece, they'd probably, you know, they'd adapt to it. And people do adapt to the wedge and the asymmetric with, you know, with all different degrees of, you know, I tend to notice that the when the top pros try those things, you don't like them as much because they're so finely tuned. Now, had they started 20 years ago on that, you know, I'm sure they'd changed it. But it just seems like if you actually watch what people are doing, they're pivoting, they're rolling in and out, they're changing their buzz tunnel, they're opening it, they're closing it, and all that requires finagling around the rim. So I think that the symmetrical round rim actually does serve you better than you think for that reason, because of the way you're constantly adjusting as you change registers and volume.
Well, you know, and I asked that question really because I think that every industry should ask it. You know, it's like, are we doing this just because this is what people before us did and before them? That's what, you know, is this the most efficient way? Has anybody ever thought about trying this? Right. And I think, you know, what if somebody comes up with a mouthpiece or trumpet design that is like completely a 180, you know, from the direction we're going now? You know, first of all, I know a lot of people wouldn't embrace it, right? Because tradition. But I think it's important to ask those questions. You know, it's like even in composition, you know, stop following the rules. You know, try to break as many rules as you can.
I'm a big fan of not doing it because that way, you know, just because, I mean, very much so. You know, I throw stuff out all the time. You know, I'm always changing things in the software, changing designs. You know, I'm never a slave to the past. The one thing though with a thing like a mouthpiece is, you know, you take a when you take a top pro and you make a tiny change, and I'm talking about, you know, the diameter of a hair, you know, thousandths of an inch, you can cripple them very quickly. Right. So, you know, if you do too much of a, you know, too big a turn, they're no longer a trumpet player. You know, like you can. What I have focused on is not making a quantum leap in a mouthpiece or in a technology so much as speeding the pace and efficiency of making those incremental improvements. Right, kind of like the British, you know, Sky cycling team from, you know, that won all those Tours de France a few years ago.
Oh, right.
You know, Chris Froome and everything. They talked about constantly, you know, continuous improvement and, you know, or, you know, the lean manufacturing, you know, all these continuous small improvements, speeding how fast you can make those. You know, the way to make the quantum leaps is by making faster, small adjustments to get there, rather than making one big quantum leap. You know, I think that's, you know, that's where it's at.
It's interesting. My mind just went to the number of 4-valve trumpets that are being turned out. Right? It's like, how long before that's what ends up in a sixth grader's hands, right? I mean, their hands aren't going to be big enough, but you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden Stomvey and, you know, of course, Courtois had the 4-valve flugel and all this. But it's like, why not? You know, and who was it? Pickett had built that 5-valve C trumpet.
Yeah,
you know, for David Hickman, you know, all those years ago. It's like, well, how long then before? You know, but I look at that as like you're talking about those, not exactly a quantum leap, but those little changes along the way will eventually that'll be the norm at some point.
And if you look at where it was, you know, 20 years ago or 50 years ago versus where it looks like a quantum leap, but it's not. It's a bunch of small, you know, and you can't just jump too fast because, you know, you can't take top players and turn them to beginners again. You know, that's not good for anybody, but you can take lots of little leaps, you know, lots of little steps and then arrive somewhere great, you know. A friend said to me once, or, you know, it's a comment, you know, people underestimate what can be accomplished in a year and overestimate what can be accomplished in a day. So they're constantly frustrated at the end of the day. They didn't get enough done. But yet at the end of a year, they haven't accomplished nearly as much as, if they took each day and made enough steps each day, they would go very far in a year. But instead they're frustrated that they couldn't finish in 8 hours what they were hoping to. And so I think that's the way of it, is to keep that longer term focus and making lots of little stutter steps efficiently, quickly, and in the right direction, rather than worrying about hitting a home run.
So here's something that impresses me is like you have the technical know-how, right? You've designed, developed the software. You also have the ears, but you also have this. Well, I mean, I have not dealt with you as a client, but what appears to me is, man, you'd be great customer service, right? I mean, I don't think sometimes those necessarily go together, but it's like, somebody who can be that eloquent with, here's the process, here's what we're doing, and can speak to it. That's impressive.
Well, I mean, I'm an engineer, and I'm a good one. That's how I've made my living thus far. And I started a successful automation business. So, and I have a top graduate degree. So, I'm not into false modesty. I'm a good engineer.
But you should toot your own horn. Seriously.
Yeah, I don't have any problem saying that. I know I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
I'm also very cognizant, as sort of just a student of human nature, that and of business, the best technology doesn't always win. The Betamax was better than the VHS. It just wasn't in every respect, but somehow it didn't win. And so a lot of engineers really, missing the forest and focusing on the tree type of people, they don't, they imagine that if they start a business and they have a great idea and good technology, that everything will be fine. And I assume that it won't. I assume that it'll be terrible. And marketing is, 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration, and so occasionally, I have a good idea, marketing wise. And then I know there's a lot of, rolling up your sleeves and doing a lot, just really unsexy stuff, right? Figuring out the tariff code for mouthpieces and how do you ship a thing there and what's the cheapest way to get, how do you get boxes for your products and, like dumb stuff like that.
Right.
That's important. And so,
you see what Eddie Davis just posted there. Most musicians are horrible at business.
Yeah.
I think it requires a different brain process. Agreed. It's not that we can't learn, and I think that's one thing music schools are doing a better job of, is including some sort of business element within those degrees. So, hopefully that'll change for everybody.
Well, shout out to venture artist and professor Matt White, who is, I think, the future of where pedagogy is going. He's very much thinking about, he realizes that it's not enough to teach someone in classical performance how to play the excerpts.
Right.
And it's not enough to teach someone in jazz performance how to play the 2/5 patterns and how to play the giant steps in all of the 12 keys. Like that's not sufficient. You've got to empower people to play the styles of music, the commercial music that never get taught. And you've got to give them some business acumen, the marketing themselves and, being good at recording and tracking themselves, and recording remotely and promoting themselves and social media, all these things that go into being a performer, and that's the gig economy for all of us. It's not just about focusing on only one thing. We don't have that luxury anymore. We've got to be good at doing a bunch of different things. If you're going to be a musician professionally, almost nobody just performs certain type of music. They also have a teaching studio and they're recording and they're writing a book and they're endorsing a line of equipment and, and they have a social media following and, whatever it is, some of it paid, some of it not, some of it building of a personal brand. And, that is the way of the future. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I like it. It's, well, you're not a cog anymore. You're a, right.
Well,
you're a
we sort
whole
of
who
had
has
to
to do
make
all
a
these different things.
made a quantum leap this past year because of COVID, right? I mean, there was an immediate shift. People had to learn how to track by themselves who maybe had never, right? And it's not just doing it, it's getting it out of that comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
And kudos to those people who were brave enough to put themselves out there. You know, I haven't done that yet. I mean, interviews, that's fine, but playing, I'm saving that for my, my orchestra gigs, you know?
And and not to, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Everything that's old becomes new again,
Mhm.
uh artisans, Renaissance and after, had to be good at all sorts of technical things and artistic things. Those great composers, they were performers, and they had patrons, and they composed things that they were paid to do, and they had passion projects, and they collaborated with people, and they were teachers of students. They did all that stuff. And
Yeah.
we act like it's a new concept. It's not, I mean, they didn't have social media, but that's how they made their living, by being good at all sorts of different things, and they were innovating equipment too, and working with people who were working on equipment, and they were doing a little bit of everything. And I think that's in today's connected world, whereas 50 years ago you became good at one thing, you had an employer, you did 30 years of that, they gave you a gold watch, and if you were a musician, you had a chair in a symphony, or you had a chair in a traveling big band or whatever. You
Right.
do 30 years and maybe have a couple students, but you wouldn't have to also be good at recording and equipment, all this stuff. But we're now digital artisans who have to have Patreon. Literally, it's like the word patron. People subscribe to some of my content, and
Mhm.
and I have this channel, and I produce this podcast, and I have this performing portfolio, and I have these students, a little bit of everything. And I've realized that to be a good entrepreneur, I have to do the same thing.
While we're on Patreon, that's a great way to segue into, if you'd like to support Studio HFL, you can go to patreon.com/studioHFL. And for as little as $3 a month, you can become a financial supporter. So thanks for that. You lobbed it over the plate and I got to swing at it. So
There you go. Hit it out of the park.
you know what? I mean, what a great way to do that. It's you call it crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, however you want to think about it. But it's a great way to build a base, right? And uh, the one thing I'm not good at is asking friends and family for money, but it's somehow easier to send out an invite to complete strangers to say,
Oh
"Hey,"
yeah.
to
No,
do
I
that.
totally get that. Yeah, it is hard, uh, to monetize stuff, and it feels weird, and we
Mhm.
don't like to, I don't have a used car salesman bone in my body, really. I'd be perfectly happy to just do technology all day. Um, but I treat it as a little bit of fun and a little bit of nonsense, and uh, keep it a little bit light.
Right.
Increasingly in the social media, you'll see our sense of humor come out. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to monetize this stuff, but you can have fun doing it. And Patreon seems like a great idea, because the whole idea of it being a small contribution to several, where you're spreading it around, and
Right.
it's one payment point, but then you can easily sprinkle some money here and some money there,
Right.
and not, because the big drag isn't the money, it's the, oh, now I got to go and I got to enter information and more information. If it's already saved and I just click and say, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this, and give them each a few bucks, that's great.
Yep.
It's having to monolithically fill out a whole bunch of new stuff. Nobody wants that. But yeah, Patreon
Right.
seems a good idea. Or
Yeah.
OnlyFans, for the
Yeah.
clothing optional subscriber situation. I don't know how
Right.
that's going, but
I disagree. I think you might be a great used mouthpiece salesman, right? Hey, come on, I got a couple looking at this one. You sure you don't want to buy it? Because you walk away now, I'll make you a deal. I'll make you a deal. Come on.
well,
See, this is where your East Coast accent could come back into play,
just for you, you will look great behind that mouthpiece. Let me
right?
tell you. But actually, you bring up a good point, and these are all things that the technology, I think, is well suited for.
Mhm.
I've imagined a situation where people somehow, and I don't fully understand the economics, but we talked about a subscription model, or selling or buying back people's mouthpieces. Well, because I know exactly how they're made. I have files of
Mhm.
them, so I can put them on VenCAD, and someone could look at it and see, this one that will be obviously much cheaper than a new custom one. Is it close enough to what I think I want? You know, and here again, it's about fitting the person to the, you know, the brass, the person
Right.
the brass. It's about matchmaking. You know, it's the matchmaker. It's not about making something out of brass. It's about making a match. And so if I can accurately show you what the brass I already have on the shelf looks like, you know, well, then maybe that's, you know, maybe that is the way to sell use mouthpieces, rather than saying, you know, oh, it's this model or it's a custom. Now we don't know what it is. And, you know, take a grainy cell phone pic and that, you know, who knows how it's going to play. If I can show you an accurate drawing of it in VenCAD and you can put it up against other things that you know, well, then that might just be the way to do it.
You're a tailor. Really. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? It's you're fitting the suit to the player. You're fitting that mouthpiece to the player.
Yes, and if I already have one on the shelf that I know will fit because I've taken their measurements, and I can show them, oh, when the inseam is this and the, you know, the chest is this and the, you know, the whatever, well, then you know, we're in business and it's cheaper because it's used or it's already been produced. Or it's, you know, it's a so, you know, I think that matchmaking thing is that is what I want to innovate in. There's nothing new to be made out of brass, but making that connection between player and mouthpiece more seamless and faster and more efficient and fun, right? That's the lead demo kit that I came up with, or that I cooked up. I don't know if you've seen that on social media. I should bring up a picture of that. But so let me get a
I'll go back down to a
browser window here. But yeah, I'll see if I can Facebook, Venture Mouthpieces, and waiting for the things.
So while you're doing that, do you have a brick and mortar, a physical space where people can come to and?
Here we go. No, I'm running Venture Mouthpieces out of the garage right now, producing between 5,000 and 6,000 mouthpieces a year.
Oh my gosh!
There's the fit kit. So if you order one of our new lead mouthpieces for $30, you can add on that covers basically the postage on this fit kit, tops and backbores.
Wow.
And it's fun. It's like Christmas. All this gear arrives and you test it. You can play it in your own space without the guy at the retail counter, like looking at his watch, wondering, you know, what's going on, that kind of thing. And it's fun. You test it, you see what works, what doesn't work. And then at the end of the 2-week, you know, trial period, you tell us which of those tops and backbores, you know, fit you best. Or you say, you know, actually I'm in between these two, and guess what? We make it. You know, because then I've had my brass on your face and you can tell me how it fit, and I know exactly how to, you know, oh, I need just a touch shallower, a touch deeper, one throat size up, one throat size, oh, no problem. Click, 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 done. And I haven't started advertising it, but I will do for the same price. If you tell me that the LV2 is too small and LV3 is too big, I'll make you an LV 2.5, same price.
Hey, Victor Burgess has a question here. How do you handle the mouthpiece to lead pipe gap? Is that something you adjust, modify, fit?
That's a great question. Okay, so this is I'll drop a little knowledge on people right now, which is this: except for the straight shank Quesnon flugelhorn shank, every musical brass instrument has the same exact shank, which is to say it's a taper of 0.05 on 1, meaning that for every inch of length, it gets 0.05 inches broader. For every centimeter of length, it gets 0.05 centimeters broader. It's a 5% taper, also known as a Yarno taper. It's not exactly a Morse taper, although people use the word Morse. It's not Morse. Morse has a slightly different, it's close enough to fit, but you know. The only difference between a tuba and a French horn is the starting diameter. So if you specify the starting diameter and how far you want it to go into the horn, you know, that's all I need to know, right? So the Bach mouthpiece manual says their trumpet starts at 0.382. Actually, they tend to start about 0.384. The bigger ones, Greg Black is about 0.388. Average for a lot of brands is 0.385, 0.36. That's that first diameter right here, right? And then once you start there, every inch it gets 0.05 bigger, 0.05 bigger. So the gap is dependent on your trumpet, and your receiver. But for any given mouthpiece, right, if you make it 1,000th of an inch smaller, it'll go 20,000ths of an inch further in, 0.02 inches further in. You make it 2,000ths smaller, it'll go 0.04 inches in, and so on. So you can change the gap from any given size, and that's what reeve sleeves do. I think I think every reeve sleeve size changes the gap by a 32nd of an inch, or maybe that's a half size. But you do that based on that 0.05 taper, right? So all that to say, yes, Victor, we can make any starting diameter, which will lead to whatever gap it is in your particular instrument. What I prefer to do is measure the shank you have now, and then you can say, okay, give me the same gap, or increase the gap by so much, or decrease it by so much, and that's easily done because I measure yours, and yours is a 0.3855, and you say I want the same gap. Well, then I make your shank 0.3855. Or you say, you know what, I'd like it, a 1/16th of an inch more gap. Well, then I need to make your shank bigger for the piece that I make for you. I'll make it bigger by enough to bump it out a 1/16th of an inch. So yes, we definitely fit that.
So you can always take metal off, right? You can trim something down, but I mean, to make something bigger, you actually have to start from new stock, right?
Yeah, we do. But I guess venture really isn't much in the business of modification. We're in the process of because we have the technology to make new stuff very quickly. So yeah, my preference is to restart with a new and just make it the right size.
I'm just thinking, I can't remember what it's called, but the Harrelson, there's a gap kit I bought years ago. Well, there's a reason I don't know where it is. I don't think it worked. At least I didn't give it a fair shake, maybe. That's something else. It's like, how do you know that the trumpet that somebody's playing on is going to be an ideal fit for one of your mouthpieces?
Well, so you don't. But here again, if you're making stock mouthpieces, you're making them closer to the center of the distribution typically. So sight unseen, 0.385 for trumpet starting diameter is going to usually work pretty well for most people. Gap is a critical component, but with mono receivers being what they are, I think generally people do better with too small a gap than too big. Too big a gap, the slotting gets too tight, and the acoustic resistance gets greater, the blow becomes difficult. Like, it just doesn't lead good places. And trumpet players are good trumpet players. Good trumpet players are good because they have good ears, and they would rather the slots be a little squishier and have easier ability to adjust than vice versa. But here again, if we're doing anything custom at all, I always want to know, what are you playing now? What were you playing? Send me both. Why didn't you like that one? Why do you like this one? Someone with a wildly inappropriate gap, you're going to hear it in their playing. They're going to know it, or they will have figured it out, or someone will have figured it out. So I want to know, what are they playing now? And if it sounds pretty close based on their horns, well, then I start there. I have done gap studies, right, with people where we have tried I make it small and then give them, the foil to wrap around, and we try backing it out. 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, they end up either exactly where they were, or in a more conventional location than anything else.
Hey, have you got some artists you can mention who play on your mouthpieces?
Sure. Well, Michael Barkley in Northern Ireland, he of Barkley Microphones fame. He's a venture artist, and Matt White also is a venture artist. Vinny, our mutual friend, Vinny Shelsky, he's he works with venture and does some of the marketing, social media stuff, and he obviously plays on our stuff. And I mean, I can drop some more names. A bunch of it's become in vogue in the orchestral community, And a lot of that is thanks to John Kaplan from John Talks Trumpet.
Yeah.
The very excellent video series, and we're now sponsors of his venture. Now sponsors John
Nice.
Talks Trumpet, and he is a first-rate equipment and mouthpiece nerd. He was a user of VenCAD and a promoter of VenCAD before he was sponsored, because it's a useful tool for him. So he uses it for his tech teardowns, and he plays venture stuff. And through him, there's like this diaspora of venture in the classical world. I mentioned Aaron Norland before, and had some recent orders from some pretty heavy hitters in the top 10 orchestras. So we're invading the classical world, and fall, maybe winters is the planned launch of our classical line, Classique.
Oh, cool.
Where we're going to do something similar to what we did in the lead. So the lead and commercial, that kit there is based around lead and commercial size stuff. Classique is going to be based around the more typical classical sizes. And it's going to be a fit kit that includes screw rims, end cups, and backbores, and throats, adjustable throats, so that you can test a bunch of different throat sizes, backbores, cups, and order what you want at the end of the audition period. And it's based on the feedback we're getting from people. It's a cottage industry here of, chopping up the orchestral, usual suspects, the Parks, the Storks, of the world in the box. And, they want this rim on this cup with this backbore.
Right.
And also the rotary invasion. A lot of people, rotary has been getting bigger and bigger in America over the last couple decades, as a doubling instrument, as a, fitting all those things and serving orchestral clients. We had a lot of those happening to go with. I mean, I'm a commercial player. I'm a lead guy. I like to scream louder, higher, faster. And so the big mouthpieces, I'm not very good at playing those, but now we've been making a lot of them. And John's been a great source of marketing advice and know-how and deep technical wizardry and nerddom.
So just to back up for a second, Studio HFL started, the HFL was higher, faster, louder.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. Now I changed it to Hear from Legends, and some people think it's Hear from Larry, which, of course that works too. But hey, David Wolf, trumpet player, friend of mine, he puts, what are your thoughts on asymmetric mouthpieces? And you already answered that question earlier. So David, you're late to the show, man. If you want to speak to that again for just a second for David.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess my thought is it's a good concept. And my hesitation is the fact that, because we pivot so much as we play, and we roll in and we roll out our chops without even really thinking about it, that can impede that. And the fact that, the top players, orchestral and commercial guys, making a few tiny adjustments can cripple them on a mouthpiece. Making adjustments that big, the top people tend to not like them. A lot of your weekend warriors will find something in some of the asymmetric world and in the wedge world. And that's good. That's anything. I'm a fan of anything that works.
Right. Right.
Wedge has a patent. It runs out in 2 years. I have no problem saying, and I know they're very good about trials and that sort of thing. And I would have I've tried. I don't love the feel of it. I've tried. But I would, I don't speak badly about it. And if there's someone out there who thinks it'll work, I say go for it.
Yeah, but again, this is the beauty of businesses like yours, is there are so many options out there, and they're really all top shelf. It's hard to find a bad trumpet. It's not, or a bad mouthpiece. It's like, well, this one doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just doesn't work for you. Right.
Yeah.
But I think all of this competition is done nothing but move this industry forward fast.
There are very few mouthpiece manufacturers where I couldn't be perfectly happy on something of theirs. Now, I'd either have to test a bunch of stuff first, or I'd have scans of them and I could look at them and then know what I wanted. Right. But Marcinkiewicz, GR, Pickett, Greg Black. I know what I'm playing. I know what I play in Greg Black because I have one that I like. I really like his 10S. It's a good design.
So that's a good place for me to segue into thanking Pickett Blackburn for being a show sponsor for Studio HFL, along with Hammond Design and Carl Hammond, of course. In fact, Doug, I had on my HD T-shirt earlier, and I thought I can't wear that, on here. But speaking of T-shirts, I'm going to do a little shameless plug here for this. Let's see if you can see what this says. This is going to be my new shirt for interviewers. See if I can.
There you go.
Participation in this conversation may lead to episodes of regret. Right? Like, you're going to hang up from this and be like, what did I just do?
Well, no one likes to hear the sound of their own voice in a recording. Nobody likes that.
Right.
And everyone thinks about, what should I have said, or, but I have learned that being in the moment, being present, answering the questions, trying to be engaging and not boring, that's the recipe.
Yeah.
People have asked me before, when I go on programs, is there anything in particular you want me to promote or something you want me to say? Not really. I'm here. I want to entertain the audience and be a good hang and, respond appropriately. I'm not here with a particular kind of sales thing or set of objectives in mind, other than to satisfy curiosity, to provide some insight and food for thought. That's the name of the game for me.
Well, we have talked details. We've talked thousandths of an inch and all that sort of thing. That's great. But really, I think what you do extremely well, and we talked about this earlier, is the customers. People want to get to know you. Who's the man behind the curtain, so to speak? Is it really a wizard or somebody just pretending? And I think what we're finding out is, there's an awful lot of wizards out there. So I don't know if I think during this interview like this too, there were several things that I said that I'm going to have to go back and look at them again, listen to them, because they're like, those are great marketing ideas. Like thinking of you as a tailor, right? It's like, oh, maybe that would reach somebody. I'm going to tailor make, right? And maybe somebody already uses that, but hey, a quick shout out to Nathan Hiscock too. He's a trumpet player friend of mine and who takes some lessons. Nathan and David, both here in Indianapolis with me. Glad to have you guys here. Victor, Eddie, thank you guys for joining too. And of course, this is going to go out on the YouTube channel tomorrow. So this is going to live on in perpetuity.
Infamy, yeah. A day that will live in infamy.
Yeah, right. But man, I can't thank you enough for the time and the energy that you have, right? See, I think that's important for people to see too. This is not some just all about the details, right? I mean, you're passionate about what you do, and I love that comes across really well.
I mean, it is a pretty fun pursuit, I got to say. People do it as a hobby. People have tried 3D printing. Oh my God, 3D printing. People 3D print their mouthpieces. Actually, the next generation or the next version of VenCAD. Check this out. Oh, I should say VenCAD. Not that I want to be like the marketing guy here, but VenCAD is a free download on our website. The version that's up there on the website is woefully out of date, but the newest beta version we've been working with has a feature where for free you can download it. I'm hoping the next couple months to release it. You can export STL files. So if you design a mouthpiece in VenCAD, you can export it and print it in your 3D printer.
No way.
For free. Yes. Way. And actually, Michael Barkley, again, you should hook up with him on social media, follow him on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He and we've been working on a line of mouthpieces for him, as I mentioned, using his rim in different contexts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making a French. So when it came to things like French horn, it was kind of a guess, right? Like how big the cup should be, smaller than a conventional French horn cup, smaller throat, but how small, not as small as a trumpet. Okay.
Right.
I know what shank to put on it, but other than that, but he's in Northern Ireland. So it's a whole production to ship something and it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So in VenCAD, I showed him his piece. I showed him a conventional French horn piece. We sketched something, exported it to STL. He printed it in Northern Ireland. 2 hours later, an hour later, he's testing it. He says, oh, it's too tight. We tweak it in VenCAD, print it again. Oh, just right. And so we did this collaboration over Zoom and using 3D printing and VenCAD. and VenCAD spit right into his 3D printing software. Out it came. He tested it. You know, the time zone messed us up. He's like, oh, it's too late to test now. The neighbors, whatever. Next morning, afternoon here, he said, okay, just right. And then we made it out of metal, and actually we're shipping them out tomorrow. So.
Victor's got one more question here. When you cut a mouthpiece, is each subsequent one slightly larger due to tool edge loss?
Well, that's a great question. That is a great question. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of atoms or molecules, no in any meaningful way. Ultimately tools do wear out, but all of the tooling that I use, yeah, I guess all of it, it's all carbide, tungsten carbide, which is the second hardest thing behind diamond, and brass cuts like butter. You can use a brass tool for tungsten carbide tool for thousands and thousands of mouthpieces. Typically, I lose them due to breakage, due to errors. So yeah, I mean, do they get smaller over time? Yeah, but probably in the micro inch regime or less. Nothing that we like. Our typical working tolerance is between 0.2 of a thousandth and 0.5 a thousandth. And for scale, a hair is between 4 and 7 thousandths in diameter. So we're talking about splitting a hair into hundredths.
Right.
Before a cutting tool, like a single point boring tool, gets small enough to make any difference to a mouthpiece, it will start cutting badly. Like the edge will be messed up, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So you'll know, I mean, we check them, we QC them, they're all the same. You make 100, they're still the same, ho-hum, boring. You will start to see the cutting edge get messed up before you see any meaningful deflection on the scale of 2 or 5/10 of a thousandth of an inch. But that's an excellent question. And actually, he may be, Victor may be referring to like back in the old, in the old days, in the long ago, the box of the world would use shaped cutting tools, and these would in fact wear out and they get smaller,
well, yeah, right. They'd have to I remember people saying, "Oh, this was a Monday morning mouthpiece, and this is a Friday afternoon mouthpiece," right? And they'd have to recalibrate.
And the real problem that Bach had for a lot of years is they didn't have sort of a golden master cutting implement, so they'd wear one out, and it would be significantly smaller. Then they'd make another one to kind of match that one. Then they get smaller and smaller, and then you'd have to stare at the lettering on the mouthpiece, and is it corp with a period or without a period? And I don't like any of that stuff, because I want to scan what I have in my hand and put it on the screen and say, do you like it or not? So I don't like that kind of thinking so much. But yeah, that question is more about that sort of old school way of making mouthpieces. I will say those old shaped cutting tools. So again, shaped cutting tool meaning it's the the inverse image of what you're trying to make. So it's cutting the whole cup at the same time. If you push it in, it's a violent cut. It's it generates a lot of heat as compared to a single point modern CNC cutting tool that's cutting on a single tiny point. Much less heat generated. So and those were made out of hardened tool steel as opposed to solid carbide. So we are both doing cutting types that's less likely to wear the tool down due to thermal wear.
Right.
And we have better methods for measuring and correcting, and we're using harder materials, the carbide versus the steel. So for all those reasons, it's not the issue it used to be. And we're a boutique company. We're not making money by producing tens of thousands and charging $50. We have to charge more. Because like you said, what's expensive? Customer service is expensive. Someone calls me up and wants to, talk about their situation, that's expensive, and we got to charge for it. Marketing is expensive. We're not making money by selling 100 to a marching band. We're making money by making relationships one at a time, and hearing people's struggles. We got to give them they ship the thing, we scan it, we call them back, we have a Zoom, we make them prototypes. That's all expensive. That's why it costs what it costs. It's not the cost of the brass, it's not the materials, it's not the silver, it's the time in making those, and it's not I have magic software that can turn, designs into tooling very quickly. what takes time is that person-to-person interaction of hearing someone, listening to them play, making recommendations, doing a scan, making a piece, making a test piece, testing it back and forth. That takes time and it's expensive, but I think it's money well spent.
Yeah.
It's like a tailor, you know, it's more expensive to.
Well, you're paying for the expertise, right, of the person. It's not like you can just walk up to anybody and ask these questions, right? I mean, they're coming to you specifically for that.
We got some great questions on the line here. I'm seeing them too. I'll jump in if you like.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Eddie Davis said, does polishing or plating change anything as far as size? Yes and no, in that order, respectively. Polishing can definitely change the size, absolutely. Plating, not really, not unless you're doing a really weird thing. So, plating, the thickness of an electroplating layer is very, very, very thin. Again, based on my experience and knowledge, you know, between 2/10 and half a thou of dimension is required before the mouthpiece starts to get different in any discernible way. And I know this based on testing things that are that different with expert players and see, you know, anything smaller than a half thou is just, you know, anal retentivity, frankly. And if I make you 5 and make one that's half a thou smaller, good luck identifying. There are very few people who do that with any regularity. You know, now if you're talking about their 30-year-old mouthpiece with pits and scuffs versus my new one, they're like, this feels different. Well, of course it feels different because it's the new surface. If I make 5 identical ones and one different one and don't tell you which one, and it's only by 0.3 of a thousandth, nobody gets it. Right. No. So that is to say, the amount of plating that you typically apply is less than that. Mm-hmm. So plating, no. I mean, you can make a bell, you know, the Couperin bell, you can make a bell just from electroplating copper. You can make it thick. You could silver plate that much, but no one does. Like, silver plating that lasts for years is much thinner than that. Mm-hmm. So no, plating doesn't really affect anything, but polishing can. If you're overzealous on the buffing wheel, you can change it. And so the way to not do that is to not polish too much, but that's easier said than done. What you've got to do before that is you've got to cut cleanly so that there aren't deep scratches that have to be removed in the polishing, right? And I'll toot my own horn. And modern single point machining is almost mirror, if it's done well, when it comes out of the lathe. You can play my stuff very comfortably out of the lathe and not really, it's not a perfect mirror. It's like a little matte, but you can't feel any, like with your fingers, it feels smooth and slick.
Right.
If you machine like that, it doesn't take much buffing before it's a mirror and you're fine. The problem is that those old methods of cutting, like this, like the shaped cutting tools, they tend to leave ridges and streaks and scratches that you have to sand. Makes me want to, makes me a little ill to think about sanding. I never sand, you touch it with a little bit of rouge. But sand it, wet sand it, buff it, that could change it considerably if you want to remove the scratches. So yes, you got to be careful with polishing, not to go too hard at it. And you've got to machine well so that there's little to remove before it's considered, mirror and platable. And then from David Wolf, a question about different materials, steel, titanium. And that's an excellent question. And I think, yes, they do make a difference. I think density, certainly the density and the modulus, the coefficient of restitution, Young's modulus, however you want to call it, those do make a difference. I think steel does sound different than brass.
Well, acrylic, right? I mean, that's been a big thing lately, is having acrylic. Right.
So yeah, and I hate making mouthpieces out of plastic because plastic is terrible. People ask me for, and I've made plastic mouthpieces for such things as cold weather, situations, marching band and things, and that's fine and good. But I'll tell you, it's not cheaper. the material costs similar to brass, and the machining is much slower, much slower.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because although it seems very easy to cut plastic because you can do it with a knife, you have to run very slowly so as not to melt. I mean, I'm running typically 400 or 500 feet per minute on surface speed, and
right.
you'd set the plastic on fire or melt it at the very least at those speeds. So you have to run it super slow. You make all this silly string. It wraps around the tools. It breaks tools. One time it got wrapped around, like a bit of plastic got wrapped around a limit switch, and when I went to home the machine, didn't home right, snapped the tool. Like, I hate plastic. It's terrible. I will make it if necessary. Certainly most people don't think it sounds better, but it's, if you know, for thermal reasons, you might need it for, but I'm interested in stainless, in titanium, those sorts of things. I will say they're all harder to machine than brass, which inevitably means more money, right? You've got to go slower. You need, you know, and there's other stuff that we can't do with that I can't do with those. I don't think anyone can do with those materials. In particular, single point boring backboards. That's one thing that I do that I don't think anybody else does. So the way typically you make a backbore is still the old-fashioned way, which is with shaped cutters. You have a tool that's shaped like the inverse of the backbore you want, and you jam it in there and you make a backbore. And I believe everyone does that except me. And I single point them, which is to say I have a cutting tool on here made of carbide, custom, very expensive. It's a $400 cutting tool. And you know, you go in and it doesn't actually cut along the edges. It only cuts at this one point right on the edge. And I drive it, the machine drives it along the wall in the shape that I want. So without changing tools or getting a new tool made, I can make any backbore. And that's, for a custom manufacturer, very attractive. Because if you say, I want this backbore copied from this weird brand or this custom thing or whatever, I can copy it because I don't have to have a new tool made, which is expensive. It's slower, but based on the price premium of a boutique or custom mouthpiece, it's not bad at all.
Right.
But it doesn't work at all on I mean, well, actually, I've never tried it on. I haven't had the fortitude to try it on stainless. It's probably not a good idea. Something as free machining as brass, I think, is necessary. It's really, you know, for single point backboring. So to enable that, and just in general tooling wise, the hardest thing is to machine deep and narrow, and that's all a trumpet mouthpiece is deep and narrow. So for a lead type piece that has a long throat and that is small, you need a tiny long boring bar. Well, those things all perform worse in the harder materials than they do in brass. So you have much less flexibility. So, you know, can I machine stainless? Sure. Can I machine titanium? Yeah, once. It's very hard and rips. I mean, the machine, the vibration, it's horrible. But I can do all those things. Generally, what I find is people like the way brass sounds, mainly just because they are used to it.
Right.
Also, you know, for any given acoustic characteristic, by changing the geometry of the mouthpiece, we can change it to be more like, you know, if you want it darker or brighter or whatever, we can do that with geometry rather than with material.
Do you recall? I think Venturfa was the brand. They were wooden mouthpieces. I don't know if they're around anymore, but it was a thing a couple of decades ago.
I mean, I've seen a couple wooden, you know, boutique types of things. You know, certainly Giddings and Webster makes the stainless, you know, and does that well. You know, people occasionally. It's funny from a business perspective. People ask about it. They're like, "Can you make it out of stainless?" And if I say yes, I say, "Would you like to order one?" They're like, "Oh, no, I was just asking." You know, so. I have found it to be a little bit of a red herring from a business perspective because people want to know about it. Can you do it? Sure. You know, and you know, would you like to give me your credit card? And usually the answer is no.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of people think stainless sounds colder somehow. Oh, hey, Fred Powell.
Yeah, Fred. We're not brothers, by the way. Fred and
yeah, but I owe Fred a visit. His shop's not far away from mine. And
oh, wait, where are you?
Durham, North Carolina. So he's just.
Oh, I thought he was still up here in Indiana.
I think he's relocating his shop to North Carolina here, or has
Oh,
been.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Yeah, but Fred's a great guy. Great trumpets, great flugelhorns.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's got some very good, interesting ideas about horn design, and that's probably that'll be my next April Fool's joke is venture trumpets, but no, not really. That's not happening.
Yeah. Well, you never know, right? You never know what's going to lead into. Hey, man, I hope there's no quiz following this, because I don't know that I would get anything right on this, and but I'm grateful that people like you exist that can think in this way, because if I'm like, hey, I want a mouthpiece that sounds like this and does this, I can't speak in microns and that sort of thing. But that's where I'm thankful there are people like you to come to do that. Speaking of coming to you, what's your website?
Yeah, it is venture.mp. So venture has two N's, VENNTURE .mp, like mouthpiece.
Very cool.
I bought the domain name, and I thought that would be cool to have a .mp, because no one else does.
Yeah.
And of course, we're on social media too, so check out Venture on mainly Facebook and Instagram if you're into those things.
And if you click and subscribe, you get 50% off your first order, right?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
But John Talks Trumpet has a coupon code.
Oh, okay.
So if you subscribe to John Talks Trumpet, they're giving out coupon codes there for Venture stock or custom stuff.
Cool.
So that's yet another good reason, if you don't already have enough, to watch John nerd out on trumpet. Just today, he released a video on the orchestral mouthpieces under $100. So
now this is something I'm not familiar with, so I am going to have to start checking out what he's got out there. So
follow him down the rabbit hole. It's like it's nerd heaven, and he talks about mouthpiece certainly, but also trumpets and gear. And he's a great presenter. He's really, really, really something else. I've enjoyed his content, and now enjoying collaborating with him on some things. We did an episode together where I made him a custom piece and basically sent him things to try, and he went through the exercise on video of trying them out and that kind of thing. And we're working on another special collaboration where we are looking at the influence of some parameters on mouthpiece performance. So I'll leave that under wraps for now, but that'll probably come out next month or so. So cool. Yeah, it's been an exciting collaboration. Check out John Talks Trumpet.
We'll do that. Hey, we're going to wrap up here. Fred, by the way, he's got two locations: Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, and Elkhart. So let's see: Fred, Nathan, David, Eddie, Victor. I don't know if I left anybody out there, but thanks for all your comments and questions there. And man, like I said before, I hope there's no quiz on this, but I love all the informations, and thank you for being so good at delivering that information. It's nice not to have to pull. Okay, give me more. Yeah, you're a great guest.
It's my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff. It's a good time, and let me tell you, on any given basis, and this too, right? The reason you practice your instrument is to perform. And, scales and etudes are not fun all the time, but it's always fun to go out in front and bring people joy. And so, so emptying the nastiness out of the air compressor is not fun. And figuring out where to mail the sales tax receipts, none of that's fun. But it's fun to talk gear and hang and talk trumpet with trumpet people.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm hoping we get to cross paths somewhere along the line, whether it's
definitely,
an ITG or something, it'd be great. And thanks to Vinny Shashelski for connecting us. Vinny's a great guy. What a heck of a player, and what a heck of a guy, right?
Absolutely.
He's one of the best. So thank you guys. Doug, hang on. I'm going to sign off here. Quick reminder that you can go to studioHFL.com and subscribe to the newsletter. Of course, I do want to thank the show sponsors. That would be Austin Custom Brass, Hammond Design, Pickett Blackburn, Eastman Music Company, Shires, and Chop Saver, and let's just throw everybody else in there. And of course the Patreon patrons. And if you would like to become a Patreon patron, www.patreon.com/studioHFL. And thank you guys for being here tonight. Again, Doug, hang on. I'm going to sign off here. And all right, everybody, we'll see you next time.